Hey, my name is Oliver TAHERZADEH, and I work as an environmental economist at the Research Institute for Humanity and Nature in Kyoto. My talk will discuss and dispute the perceived need to shift towards global and industrial systems of food production in order to feed a growing global population. The global industrial food complex is increasingly viewed as a logical response to the productive limits of regional food sheds. Yet this ignores the role that regional food sheds can and do play in meeting food needs sustainably and equitably. Using cross-country evidence, I will illustrate the bounty of regional food sheds and their importance as a post-growth economic frontier. I would like to deconstruct three key imperatives of the global industrial food complex. These are food security, production growth, and efficiency. I would argue these imperatives, whilst often presented as incontrovertible, are in fact normative objectives designed to centralize power within the global food system. That they are legitimized through narratives of food scarcity, domestic food scarcity, food supply scarcity, and natural resource scarcity in response to population growth. I will discuss these in turn and argue that the scarcity critique often levelled at regional food sheds stems not from evidence of their insecurity, undersupply, or inefficiency, but a partial understanding and communication of their potential. These scarcity narratives are important to unpack as they invite a drastic and immediate transformation of regional food sheds in terms of scale and production methods. Yet, as I'll show in this presentation, regional food sheds are in fact crucial to meeting current and future food needs. I'll begin by discussing domestic food scarcity and the trade imperative. As a key topic within the problem space of promoting regional food sheds and a focus of my own research, I'll discuss this in greater depth. The supply chains of goods and services rely on systems of production which have become increasingly complex and globalized in recent decades. Here's a visual depiction of global trade represented by water dependencies between different countries, mainly due to international agricultural commodity exchange. Water use driven by international trade has increased eightfold in the last 15 years, and the UK is an interesting case study within this context. Here's the UK's global water footprint over the last 25 years. Over this period, the territorial water footprint of the UK economy has remained relatively constant, but its non-territorial impact has increased dramatically. We're often led to believe that this dependence on trade for agricultural products arises from the limited capacity of regional food sheds to satisfy national food demand. But this conclusion appears to me an artifact of food system models and how trade dependence is baked into modelling. Compare this pessimistic outlook of the food trade reliance of nations, shown in purple on the left, with the potential self-sufficiency of countries through regional food sheds on the right. On the right, we see that only a handful of regions need to meet their food needs from continental or global food markets, and the rest can be met from regional food sheds. Equally, in Beltran-Pena et al., if measures are taken towards sustainable diets and soil fertility, a far greater number of countries can meet their food needs domestically. So the scarcity of regional food sheds appears more likely a scarcity of imagination in how we undertake food systems. The aspect of this debate is the framing of trade as a source of security. Yet we justify trade relationships on the basis of price and not sustainable terms of trade. We have little clue where our food comes from, who grows it, and how. Yet we consider the diversity of trading partners in this network as a source of resilience and autonomy. COVID-induced border closures and the food supply chain disruptions that have accompanied the pandemic act as a warning of blind faith in food trade. Food trade poses risks to both countries of export and import. From an export perspective, Keikul found that 90% of the global poor live in countries where domestic food prices respond to international food markets. And on the graph here we can see that for between 200 and 400 million people, international prices are transmitted to their countries at rates of 30% or higher. And this can actually occur within just 3 months. And a greater percentage of the global poor, between 400 and 1 billion, depending on the crops that we're considering, experience a 10% hike in prices due to trade, which is really enough to limit their access to sufficient food. The import picture isn't much better, although it's often hidden from view. Within my own analysis, I found that international trade is a more significant source of water, energy and land insecurity than domestic production. And this situation is compounded by the fact that many countries share the same sources of resource risk. These are indicated by the red circles, which are sized according to their global significance. So to summarize, the domestic scarcity we see in food system modelling arises from extrapolating high trade dependency and would benefit from closer attention to the potential of regional food sheds. Trade as a source of food security ignores the growing insecurity of its natural resource base and also its consumer base in both countries of export and import. And the invisible nature of natural resources underpinning food trade has allowed food trade to become viewed as bountiful and regional and visible food production as scarce, when in fact both sources face planetary limits. What about production? Is it really true that we need to double food production by 2050 to cope with growing food demand? This supply-demand dilemma emerges again from pessimistic forecasting of food system policies and practices. First, it fixes demand, accepting increased consumption of animal products worldwide, growing food wastage, and underpriced food. On the supply side, it also fictitiously makes the case for industrial monocultures, saying that they are essential to meet this need and that regional food sheds are simply unproductive, and the need for technological improvement and scaling is necessary. The problem with this narrative is that it doesn't square with the current supply picture of food nationally and internationally. Globally, small and medium farms, less than 50 hectares, produce 51 to 77% of nearly all commodities and nutrients. Very small farms, less than 2 hectares, are important and have local significance in sub-Saharan Africa, Southeast Asia, and South Asia, where they contribute to around 30% of most food commodities. The majority of vegetables, roots and tubers, pulses, fruits, fish and livestock products, and cereals are also produced in diverse landscapes, not monocultures. Lastly, I want to discuss resource scarcity and the efficiency imperative. Technological fixes have long been prescribed to improve the resource efficiency of regional food sheds, yet the efficiency imperative does not necessarily reduce the rate of resource depletion in agricultural production, and there is evidence that it compounds the problem. The global industrial food complex relies on efficiency as a form of damage control. It achieves a relative decoupling of production from resource depletion, the crop per drop, let's say, but it doesn't keep a check on the rate of agricultural production, and so over time does not strive towards decoupling of production from resource depletion in absolute terms. Efficiency measures can also have unintended consequences, reducing the cost of inputs and increasing their rate of exhaustion. These rebound effects have been shown in the case of drip irrigation, which has actually increased overall water usage in the areas that they've been implemented. So resource scarcity is as much a problem of efficiency as it is inefficiency. And while the Green Revolution is often seen as a spectacle of technological success and resource conservation, these claims don't hold up to scrutiny. Here we see a continued trend of growing wheat, rice and cereal harvest in India before the Green Revolution. Yet the effectiveness of the Green Revolution is routinely compared against the 2 preceding years of drought in India. Stone suggests that the trajectory of regional food sheds was towards greater and greener harvests in India, irrespective of the Green Revolution measures. Farming, much like the economy, faces physical limits to growth, and technology or efficiency measures will not overcome these. The presentation of efficiency as a silver bullet to the current crises within the food system overstates its effectiveness to date, and overlooks the need for systemic changes in food provision and food consumption. And the use of technology to engineer food production in regional food sheds poses real risks to resource scarcity, food supply, and livelihoods, which demands closer attention given its increasing application. To conclude, these scarcity narratives present the issue of food security as a production and technological deficit. They narrow food futures to focus on growth, trade, and technology, and they legitimize these visions through alarmist forecasting and selective scenarios. These scarcity narratives are also employed to highlight the importance of growth-orientated economic progress, and so I believe form part of the post-growth struggle. They frame poverty and the ecological crisis as symptoms of low growth and technological deficit. They build growth into their models, presenting continued industrialization, production, and consumption as a greener alternative. And they legitimize these visions through a false equivalence of degrowth to recession, and through dodgy accounting of the risks that the green growth development paradigm poses. I'll finish with a few research and policy priorities which I believe require greater attention. These scarcity narratives need to be properly scrutinized by taking a systemic view of food and how it can be supplied. Taking such a view brings into sharper focus the importance of regional food sheds as a viable alternative to the global industrial food complex, and also debunks the narratives which sustain it. As an economist and modeller, I would like to see greater commitment towards the development of food system models which are transparent in the assumptions they make about regional food sheds and transformative in their thinking about the role they play in addressing issues of sustainable and equitable food supply. Lastly, given the overlapping narratives of scarcity and security seen within the domains of food and economy, I would like to propose we view the food system as a post-growth frontier, in which challenges, solutions, and learning can inform the wider struggle towards a sustainable economy. Finish by thanking the organisers of this symposium for their invitation to contribute towards this session, and I look forward to learning from the conversations over the coming days. Thanks.